Guys, today we got to interview one of the biggest influences on my fitness and my thoughts as a coach, James Fitzgerald. He's the owner of OPEX. He won the CrossFit Games in 2007. He's been around a long time. He's coached a lot of people and he's mentored a lot of coaches. Today, I got to ask him a lot of questions on the origin of CrossFit. What does it mean philosophically to be a free thinker in the fitness world with good principles? And then ultimately, the OPEX model of what does it mean to live a larger life, we got to dig deeper into. So why this is a really cool podcast for comeback athlete listeners is we get to go into a really fascinating history that we're all standing on in the fitness world right at this moment. So it gives a great insight on that. But we also go really deep on what it means to be a thinking athlete. What does it mean to be thoughtful and philosophical on your fitness and the reason why we want to still move and live and try to be, as James said, climbing a mountain at 95 and still making love to our wives or our husbands. So I hope you listen in, hope you enjoy, and please subscribe, leave us a good review, and enjoy the great conversation with James. All right, welcome to the Comeback Athlete Podcast. My name's Blake, and I am here with legend and mentor from a distance, James Fitzgerald. This is actually my first time getting to meet you. So we're going to jump in and just start talking about some things our viewers would want to hear, which is former athletes, philosophy and purpose on movement, and jumping in. So I reached out to you earlier last week. And you're in Idaho, which is much nicer weather than where I'm at in Florida right now, I'm assuming.
Yeah, some people I think enjoy it down there.
Well, I do from January to like May, and then it gets a little hot. But yeah, so I was telling you off air, and I thought this was a place maybe I could set up for our conversation today, which is when I was getting into fitness, I was always a part-time fitness trainer. I had done that as a part-time gig when I was in seminary, which is a place you go study to be a minister for grad school. And, I had to study a lot of philosophy and theology and all kinds of different anthropology. So when I decided to switch careers and go full-time into the fitness industry, I came across OPEX, and that was one of the first places I found that love for thinking and philosophy and purpose for movement and being human and thinking about what that looks like, and yet not binding people's conscience, like maybe with a religious belief or any other maybe more dogmatic beliefs. But there was a sense of still thinking critically, and that really drew me to you. I want to open with, where did that thinking start to come from in your fitness journey? What influenced that? And then how did that story kind of come about for you personally?
Yeah, there's a little feedback every time you move from your mic on this side. Yeah, right there. That's rubbing on your shirt when you move. So,
perfect. Thanks for letting me know that.
yeah, I'm not sure if you can hear it, but it's like a scratch every time you kind of move.
See if I can get that down.
Yeah, where that came from? Well, I think maybe just over time, but what I think about is probably my academic career. So, doing some post-secondary studies, something a little bit more in depth of the body and movement. I think that really was you're kind of just because for me specifically, I wasn't really taught how to think about things in high school. Um, and I never even knew it was a thing, but then when you get into studying movement, I think at a level that it really sticks with you, like it's personal to you, which it was for me. I think you start asking tough questions, and I think that's then over time you start reflecting that knowing that you're asking tough questions, and so there's a thinking component involved. And to the person who's out there in the fitness universe that sees me inside of the fitness landscape, like asking questions, I could understand how people could perceive that as, a quote unquote thinker within it.
Mm-hmm.
So so it came from the academic place, I think, and then I kind of carried that over into the profession. And then I just wanted to make mention that I understand why people think of it, uh, it's perceived as a philosophical bend
Mm.
inside of it. I mean, to be although you didn't ask it, my perspective is that there always was critical thinkers and good philosophy inside of fitness.
Mm.
Ironically, you can go to all corners and see that. The original CrossFit forums, which I was, really attracted to, was not just because of being able to throw down on your own in the basement at 3:45 a.m. You know, it was,
Yeah.
people forget that. It was a three days on, 1 day off format,
Hmm.
and on the day off format, there would be hundreds and hundreds of commentary based upon a philosophical proposition that Greg or whoever was head of CrossFit would propose. Right? They'd say, there'd be stuff in there, especially at the time, on for example, the Iraq War and political, foreign policy. So think about that. I mean, we're just a bunch of people doing thrusters and kipping pull-ups and looking like idiots.
Yeah.
But so I'm just trying to give you a sense that you just got to look. You just got to look in all corners, and you'll see that that what I call, or what my mentor called it, higher order thinking, was always a part of the fitness movement. It's
Mm.
just that I can just I'm giving an opinion on people's perceptions of mine, but or what OPEX was. Because we were a business that had these principles of like
Mm-hmm.
critical thinking on fitness and what it means and what's the purpose, etc. We were inside that entertaining CrossFit world, and so we were perceived as, oh, look at these guys. They could be the only ones out there that are really have a philosophical bend inside of their principles.
Yeah.
Uh, that's my opinion on it. It's always been there. But I can also see why, as I said, sorry to be lengthy on that, but I could also see
No.
why we were perceived as this, philosophical things inside of fitness. But it brings the question, like, you know why wasn't it always there? you know
Mm.
why 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 wasn't that always a part of um, the thing, right? I mean, I've always considered this, as I got older, I considered it a little bit more deeply, but the concept of dualism and these connections of body to whatever is that's not connected to body, depending upon people's beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
I always thought that should have been a part of like a coach's repertoire. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we shouldn't just be talking across the table about broccoli. Is it good or not, or is coconut oil going to cause cancer or something? I always felt that we should have talked about, like, do you believe in God?
Mm-hmm.
I just give that statement because it kind of like raises hairs on the back of people's necks, but
Yeah.
it's not like you're looking for an answer of that. You're participating in building skills with another human on asking really challenging questions. And then
Yeah.
it makes the client then go, you know what, this is more than just the body.
Mm.
There's more to it there. So um,
And you're saying that your mentor and people before you really, um, you had a sense of, I guess, of really just learning that this was always how it was, and maybe that. And I'm going to ask this as a question now.
like the
Uh,
critical thinking aspect.
the critical thinking aspect of
Yeah.
that. And so and then part of critical thinking was that you everything that's new gets challenged to some extent, right? So CrossFit was somewhere that you were in fitness prior to that, but then it was something that you became a part of.
Yes.
And then it came with, like all new things, critiques and challenges.
Yeah,
And I think some people ran away from those and just said, we're going to ignore them and screw them, who cares?
for
And
sure.
other people, I think, like yourself, and I'm asking this in a question because I'm framing it, but I think I see it right, but you clarify. People like yourself leaned into those challenges and took some of them and said, okay, maybe they're right on some of this. And then some of them, and you said, maybe they're wrong on some of this and there is benefit. What would you say that's accurate? And if so, where would you say that kind of, that, what would you say was the things that you leaned into and did not agree with?
Yeah. Yeah, I saw them as possibilities. I think that's the difference.
Mm,
I think a lot of people may have, like you had used the word challenge, challenged it, the idea,
mm,
or kind of tiptoed in it and challenged the notion of what it was and how it all fit in. But I saw tremendous possibilities, and we all, every human is different in that, right? Like how they take on information based upon what kind of current knowledge they have and their openness to kind of think about those things. And I just happen to be grateful for the fact that I was always curious,
mm,
um, and I never allowed, which I'm not going to say I never allowed, because I certainly participate in the heretic dissent style stuff that was part of the CrossFit world. I mean, we all know it was true. No, not a lot of people talk about it. Maybe it'll be a book over time, but
yeah.
um, if you didn't, just in case those listening don't know, yes, if you weren't a part of the CrossFit movement, um, there was a unspoken cabal that made sure you followed order, and if you didn't follow order, you're out.
Mm,
Um, so so you see what I'm saying? Like but I saw tremendous possibility inside of the and this is to answer the second part of your question, inside of what no one had the balls or ovaries to do 10 years
mm,
prior, Greg did, right? Because the mid 90s was this massive peak of credentialism and almost like this absolute answer to what fitness was. Inside of the
mm,
university setting, they're like, we have all the answers. This is VO2 max and this is strength, numerous words for that, but all the answers were there. And so it spit out for two generations then everyone who thought they had the answers with regards to nutrition and strength and all this kind of stuff. And Greg indirectly, there's another other people but Greg basically indirectly said, you don't have any answers whatsoever, right? With this concept of to be extreme, but I mean that's what he was good at, using extreme language or extreme idea of like black box, right? It's just like, no, he just put all these things in together and here's the principles that'll come out of it that will somewhat agree with your perceived absolutes.
yeah.
But again, this stands for the second part of the question. I saw so many possibilities inside of those other ways of doing things, And I'm not sure if you may have heard me within CCP language say this, but I'll just give you years. In 1991, it was well accepted that if you wanted to get a dose response of a specific thing for 90 seconds, this is exactly what every human would respond to based upon the 90 seconds without anything else that was colored in it. Like I know
Wow.
it's hard for people to think about that, but I can tell you it was the case, right? Listen, there's still books written on it that people still use in current academic settings for kinesiology. I know this, where it's like, oh, 90 seconds of work, this is exactly the dose response you're going to get. And so imagine my brain looking at a thing like Fran, and someone doing 2 minutes of work and being completely destroyed,
Yeah.
like taking whatever. I don't want to get dramatic, about it, but like it would take them 30 minutes to become a regular human again, to like reproduce or chew food,
Yeah.
basic
Yeah.
things, right? Or to think about God's existence. Like you couldn't do it for 30 minutes,
Yeah.
So imagine that. It's like everything, you know, everything that came before is gone. Do you see that? So I saw tremendous possibilities
Mm.
in in the back end of, to use your language, taking those things on and like dipping my toe in and practicing it with clients. And it just so happened that on the competitive end, like there was another aspect of me that was like what would called back in the day a fire breather, right?
Yeah.
Where I just couldn't get enough of the competition
Hmm.
personally, you know. And maybe that kind of conversation there is a good segue into our future conversation of purpose and meaning and like
Yeah.
driving at deep things.
100%. I want to ask that, and that's where we're going to go. But I'm curious to know. You mentioned a lot of the positive of how CrossFit was this new thing, and it opened up the idea that there was so much more to discover in fitness, and that's actually a very unique take. I've actually never heard anyone say that. I'm sure someone has, but that there was this. It was CrossFit has actually added this thing into the fitness community that has actually made us think different about energy systems. On that, where did you start sensing some of the criticisms, and then you try to speak into it as a part of it, right? Because I still see you as a part of the CrossFit community to an extent, but
Mm,
you spoke out as a prophet, let's say in the theology kind of
mm,
language,
yes.
against those things in some ways. Um,
More
like
like Juba.
yeah, yeah. So what would be, the some of the things that you took from the strength and training communities and the fitness communities that were critiquing us, um, that you said those were fair, and we should take heed to that.
Yeah, well, to back up, there actually was a lot of people on board with CrossFit that did think they had the answer for good reason, but they didn't have, let's call it, the experience or the technical or educational background that I did to be able to like really do a debate back and forth. For example, if you know, and I'm gonna get you to come back to the second part of your question there because I couldn't get past your first point, and I just want to make sure you're still connected to what the second part of that question was for me to answer. But for example, I used to do presentations in Canada, and just I was let's call it like an up and coming strength coach, right? I would do national presentations on some specific specialization stuff or etc. Um, and then when I would be on a panel or when I would have a conversation with, at the time, a Mike Boyle esque person at the time, I could always hold my own when speaking about CrossFit
Mm,
and the energy systems and work and just the setup design of it. Okay, and that's where the separation occurs and why I wanted to hit on your point that those inside of CrossFit, there was a lot in there for all with good intentions. These were all good people with good intentions, but they had no knowledge whatsoever of the power of what was. And I guess there's philosophical questioning: is did they need to know? Right? It's like, well, it's kind of nice to know all those other things. And I would
mm,
argue it is important to know, and we'll probably get to that on the end of my vitality model concept. But I saw that there was a lot of people who were on board with that, but I just kind of gave this like a little bit more of a scientific reasoning behind the quote unquote the dose response, and
mm,
the ideas and what could come from it. I was someone that again could go back and forth with the classic strength and VO2 max person who's scientifically sound and be like, actually, I could build an organism so much more effective than only the two tools that you want to use with these tools over here. And this is how it's with these ideas of what I ended up calling mixed modal work. Right.
mm-hmm.
And so now What was the second part of your question or the premise of it, so I could, because I got caught. I apologize.
No, no, yeah. So you were able to always hold your own within that, but what were some of the critiques that you actually did agree with?
That I did not agree with.
Well, no, that you actually did agree with. So people from
Oh,
outside that they were like, CrossFit is bad because of X, Y,
oh,
and Z. Yeah.
yeah. Some some things that I did agree. So let's put that situation in place. I have a debate with the Mike Boyle esque of 2005, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what you're asking is, what would they say is wrong with CrossFit?
Yes,
Oh,
and mixed modal training and that
yeah, yeah.
style. Mm-hmm.
Um, I guess their first thing would be that they couldn't have a power grab anymore.
Mm, mm,
Yeah,
yeah.
this is deeply philosophical to go back on your words, but this is where I've landed over 30 years. Is that it came down to, they sensed, whether they knew it or not, that it would result in independence of humans and free
Mm,
movement. That's what I sense. Underneath that layer, I would say there was something like kind of like the Trump phenomenon. It was like a bull in a china shop, where it's like, oh my gosh, this is going to upset all the foreign policy, and like, how shitty politicians are
mm,
morally. Like, this is gonna it's just gonna like create, which I, by the way, as a side note, I love. I love that concept, right?
yeah.
That just makes me so happy to just watch, people like that squirm when they're withholding this information or not allowing the public to kind of see these kind of things. So I think that was secondary.
Mm,
They were like, oh geez, and then there was some good arguments on licensure and credentialism, which I personally said that was the death of fitness when that happened,
mm,
indirectly, right? But there's trade offs in all these big movements in the world and in life. But the trade offs are that when you strive for this like black box concept that moves people towards freedom of movement, and being free movers and independent of anyone, because as you know, Greg had this staunch libertarian thing that he just couldn't escape the movement of CrossFit, right?
yeah, yeah.
We could talk about commercialism and all that stuff that came with it, but it couldn't escape it. I think that's, people think the credentialism, and the death of fitness happened there because anyone could do it. So you see the
Mm,
trade-offs there, right? Oh, anyone can do it. Oh yeah, you're just a person who's working out in a group fitness thing, and it's called CrossFit. You could also do a coaching seminar for $1,000, and now, if you really like it, you could open up a business, right? And this is where then all of a sudden people like me, right? And this is why the Black Box Summit was kind of like the crisscross in 2008 of like all worlds colliding, right? And it symbolically came to be in Dave Castro and Greg Everett almost getting into fisticuffs.
oh
Uh,
wow.
if people even know what fisticuffs is, I just aged myself tremendously by saying that. But I'm not even sure. What would a 20-year-old say today? They came to blows, or is that like generation millennials?
Yeah, they fought. I don't know. I'm 38, so I'm stuck in the middle
Oh,
there. I don't.
you have
Yeah,
no idea then either, right? What they're
yeah,
doing
I
today.
don't. Um, you know
Yeah.
what that
So
reminded me of, real quick, when you were saying that? I know
yeah.
that. I'm sorry, but like the it made me think of the people, the criticism of the Reformation. So historically, it was like the Catholic Church had one say of the entire Bible, and then when Martin Luther rebelled against that, we'll call Greg kind of the Martin Luther. There was a sense of like, okay, what you've just opened can be for good and also for bad, and now you got a smorgasbord of expression of what Christendom is or fitness is, right? To keep the parallel. But like you see those things happen throughout history in all kinds of tribes or sectors. It's very
Mhm.
fascinating you made that connection there because I've never thought of connecting that to kind of CrossFit, but there is a sense that now the fitness world has exploded and anyone can do it. And how do you separate yourself? And anyways, that it's very American in the sense, because I still like the idea to be able to sift through and do my own work to figure out who's philosophically I'm aligned with, right?
Yep.
And I think
Exactly.
we just have to figure that out as coaches and as people in the fitness community. Where do you land? And it takes criticism and critical thinking. Criticism is not a good word, but critical thinking to get there. I yeah
I love that. I mean, I'm all in on that.
yeah that
Your path.
freedom.
Yeah, man, I'm all in on that. I
Mm-hmm.
will. Yeah, I'll do whatever it takes for that. Yeah.
Well, I wanted to go into our next part, which you had alluded to earlier in the podcast, but you called yourself a fire breather. I like that. Where did you come up with that term?
No.
Uh,
Um, it was the name at the time of
that was a book, wasn't it?
Chris Wheeler. Well, no, that came out afterward in that discussion of it. But it was on the forums. The Josh Everett, Greg Amundsen, Eva Twerkdens, Nicole Carroll. I'm missing some names that were like classic on the board there. Josh Bridges, Bionic is like it's a huge history there of that. Ironically, the shorts that I wore when I won the games were these and I wore them for the first day, the hopper workout and the run. They were fire breathing board shorts basically. So
I used to have board shorts. That was when we aged
so
ourselves
cool.
in CrossFit. Yeah.
Yeah.
You had to be around CrossFit like 10 years ago to know what board shorts are. Um, all right. Well, you were a fire breather.
Mm.
Explain how you got into fitness, what drew you into CrossFit, and then what life was like afterwards, and then the philosophy you've taken on now. You're retired pretty much. You've mentioned that like now movement philosophically means this to you and how you arrived at. But let's go through the history. I just want to hear your story.
Yeah. Yeah. So I had I'll give you it's I've done it so many times that I have even a hard time now of like missing out on some pieces that don't give the entirety of it just for my own, speaking it out loud. But I had this I had this moment in life at 18 years of age where I had an injury.
Hmm.
And up until that point of time, just everything for myself as a human and how I perceived everything was like, I don't know, just, life just seemed, without even reflecting on what kind of bad life would be. I only had lost a couple of close friends at 13 and had some major spiritual, shakes around that period of time. But 18, I had a major injury and then had a monstrous transformation of myself in numerous ways, but just know that I transformed unbelievably through all this awareness of the connection between biology and the limitations on biology and aging and existence. Like I had some existential, I think, guess the words are existential things that came up at 18 years of age, largely inside of the physical universe, the physical space, right? So I had an injury, which of course took away this physical expression capability, but also I reflected at the time by just looking around as how the world worked around me when that wasn't happening, and came to these really nihilistic moments
Hmm.
of there's yeah, you're just a number. This is what I just said in my head, right? And I for the rest of my life up until this point in time, I've been trying to rework these answers in my head every day on, post the injury when I was 18, the meaning of things. like, and it was largely so. Just to reiterate, right? When I say transformation, there was an actual change in, and I'm so grateful for it, right? That happened.
Mm.
Otherwise, I can humorously and metaphorically come up with a horrible version of James Fitzgerald. If
Yeah.
that didn't happen, like I really do think that would be the case in a separate universe, like a really not good person.
Hmm.
So I had that happen, and then I fell in love with this new transformation of physically trying to recover from the injury, and these aha moments, which were numerous, but one of the major ones was that I am now at this point, like when I was 19, a better human, a
Hmm.
better person, and a stronger person than what I was, as the quote unquote athlete. That's the
Hmm.
persona. That's all that I had. And this is to your audience and to your community. They're just going to you know, feel this when I say it. But there's this thing that you attach to that kind of perception that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
It's just super powerful. It's a super powerful thing. And I had completely awashed myself of it. So I had
Hmm.
this whole new person that fell in love with the physical transformation and all the shit that comes with the hard work
Yeah.
of trying to get stronger and be better, and just like the philosopher J.G. Bennett would say, just create discipline over this physical thing,
Hmm.
you know. And so I was like, listen, what do I do in this world to stay on top of this? I partnered up with all the best thinkers. I partnered up, meaning I'd ask them questions nonstop or do their seminars, whatever. I went to university to study it. I then wanted to practice it as a vocation. And I just gave you the very short and front end story, but it should explain everything that came thereafter.
Hmm.
It was just being curious and having this undying personal commitment to trying to figure out all those things that young 18-year-old um, really had taken away.
Hmm. That's awesome. So from there, you started going to, did you go right to school, right to university to start training or studying for kinesiology or biomechanics or something? And then from there, did you get into some personal training, or how
Yes.
did you? Okay,
Yes.
take us through that, and then how did
Sure.
that impact your philosophy of coaching early on?
Yeah. Yeah. How did it impact my philosophy of coaching early on? Um, I'm just pausing to think if it's anything different than my usual answer to that. But my usual kind of, it's not a deflection either. But
Hmm.
the I think it's important for people, as I've mentioned on the YouTube video you could link that I did. It takes 30 years. It's inside of LearnRx, or I think OPEX posted a while ago. I think inside of there, it was important for coaches to hear the story
Mm.
of. It's very important to recognize what things were like in the late 90s with regards to the fitness universe. And so, um, and I do think it's important that in 2025 to say that now, being 26 years later, because then you can recognize that my whole concept of fitness was all up and up. It was all like there was so much opportunity, Blake.
Mm.
So much opportunity to share these things. Everyone wanted to be a part of it. There was no such thing as preventing trainers from working at a gym or preventing someone from learning more, or like it was just this mass sharing of information, right? Because we were on the starting point of the web bubble, right, where information was getting pushed out and you're just grasping it on web 1.0. So you could see how my philosophical, it's hard to put a thing on how like how my early things led to a philosophical understanding of coaching. um, but to answer your question, so it doesn't seem like a deflection. I just did a lot of it because I had
Mm.
lots of opportunity. There was unbelievable opportunity to be a coach and to help people. it wasn't like this, but I'll just, metaphorically speak about it. Like people were clamoring to get a trainer. Like everyone wanted to have a trainer. Everyone wanted to speak to the guy in the gym who was like asking the questions around fitness and who was credentialed now, as
Mm.
a BSc basically, and having some research done and having the credentials at the time, which were big in America and Canada, PFLC and CSCS, which at the time were like, oh my gosh, this guy must know something, So there was unbelievable opportunity. And I use this terminology only because it kind of adds a little bit of humor to the story, but I was a whore to the fitness industry, basically. Meaning that, I worked everywhere for everyone. I did everything right because the opportunity was there.
Mm.
Um, and so, do you see how, like, to philosophically talk about, well, how do you get these ideas on like curiosity and fitness, and well, what things are best for humans and etc. The simple answer is a ton of experience,
Mm.
like a ton of experience. To make it more layman's terms, the trenches. You got to do the work.
Yeah.
When Charles Poliquin, may he rest in peace, with all the shit that he said that was horrible as a human to say, there's some things that he said um, that you will never forget. One of the things he said was that, because I think I just asked him a question on like writing some stuff or writing a book or putting all these principles in place. And he said, I got no time to do that. I'm coaching people.
Mm.
That's stuck, like really heavy, right? Because as you would understand today, Blake, like who has time to be an internet star? Who has
Ugh.
time to, like, do you see what I'm saying? Like, what are you doing? So it's the greatest coaches out there are the ones that no one knows.
Mm.
The greatest coaches out there are the ones that no one knows. The value of a coach, I said this before, the value of the coach is you minus the internet. So these things of that you're asking there, of like where the philosophy came from, I can't take any credit for like having that, but I will say that doing a lot of coaching certainly opens your mind.
Mm.
Like the people who know shit, who actually did stuff in this world, will tell you. Reading lots,
Yeah.
traveling, um, and like expressing yourself. Those three things will turn you into the largest uh, open-minded pacifist. Like it is, and said a different way, some people can use those three formulas in a religious formula and still get to the same landing, right?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And anyways, I just got caught
No,
on a
that was
experience.
gold. That
Experience. Okay, you gotta be in the trenches. You got to do a lot of work to create the answer to your question, a philosophical coaching, principles or a platform. Yeah.
yeah. And that was gold. That was great. We were going into, you went from personal training, kind of learned your philosophy of training through that. You basically hustled under lots of different people and never stopped asking questions, is kind of how I took that. When did you, and I would hear this from a lot of coaches, when did you feel like you heard or decided that you wanted to be more focused as a coach than an athlete? Because I know being an athlete was important to you,
Mm.
but there's a lot of people that say, man, I don't want to give up my own fitness for other people's fitness. And for a coach, there is really a laying your fitness down in some senses to want to help other people achieve their
Yep.
maximal genetic potential.
Yes.
Um, when was that shift for you along that story and that process?
Yeah, it was probably after I won the games the first year.
Mm-hmm.
Because as the story goes, which I've said this before, but it's hard to kind of reflect upon that because a lot of people see the other stuff that happened after that, um, which is really not that much in terms of physical like capabilities. But I am proud of some of them. But I didn't want to do anymore after 2007 because I was like up until 2007 it was like my own thing. Like my clients were doing some mixed modal stuff since like early 2005, really, where I'd sprinkle in different things inside of conditioning. Like now that I look back on it, it was kind of inappropriate, but I used the former principles of like time domains and rest and recovery, and I kind of started playing with things, and then I perfected that dose response over time. I think, anyways, to culminate in what I call mixed modal training. But I think that doing it all for me, when 2007 happened and I won at the games, in my mind, and you could look at the movie Every Second Counts in 2008, you could, the underpinnings of that, you could see it where Savan and I had these, like, I didn't even want to do the 2008 games, right? I was fully on board with helping all those around me who had taken just this CrossFit-esque style of fitness. And then they heard about me winning and they were like, well, I want to do that, right? I hate 10K runs on asphalt, you know? So it's like a classic story, right? And so I was like, and it wasn't just like 5 people, right? It was thousands of people around the world, local to me, anywhere that wanted to touch it, right? So imagine that point where they're all like, how do we do this? I want to do that. That seems so exciting. That seems like so much fun, et cetera, et cetera. So it was at that point in that year, 2007, 2008, where I was like, I can't do this. I can't do all this, Yeah. Anyways,
So,
you can
so,
see
so,
you can see on my face in Every Second Counts too. I start to tear up and get very emotional
yeah.
when Seven asks me about seeing everyone come up and congratulate me and etc. I mean, what you're seeing are those emotions of this ripping apart of the individual athlete persona that I tried so hard to get rid of when I was 18,
Hmm.
and knowing that there's more than just you, right?
Yeah.
That was like basically this was going on in my head was like, it's not about you, dude.
Hmm.
It's not about you. Do you see that? And so it's like, this, what comes out is like, I'm so happy that all my clients are here, but it's emotional turmoil that just comes to the top based
Yeah.
upon the question of like that break between I guess individualism and collectivism within fitness.
It's funny. I just wrote a post on this yesterday, which is why I came. But like, people ask me all the time, how do you train by yourself so often? I can't do that. I got to be in a class. And I don't feel like I train by myself. Like, I feel like I do my own program, but I do it around people. I do it in response to a coach that checks on me. I do it in a sense of a small community, but I still feel like I'm with people, even though I do my own training. I
Yeah.
think in a sense you were feeling that you were the one on the competition floor, you won, but there was this movement that
Mm-hmm.
you could feel and sense was going on between your clients, people that were there competing with you, that it was bigger than just you or an individual. And I think I'm going to ask you now, was that kind of the catalyst for like wanting to help coaches keep that experience going and growing? I mean,
Yeah,
in a
yeah, for
sense.
sure. Because at the
Yeah.
same time, I mean, I was still over a decade deep now in terms of just coaching and having very successful business.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have people seeing the CrossFit success and this like at the time it was considered queer, small q queer, because
Yeah.
the concept of queer has been taken very just out of fashion today. But it was a queer concept, right? Because it was nonconformist. It was outside of the norm of taking on this, radical concept of fitness and involving it in people's day to day lives for fitness,
Mm.
right? So and this was at a time where I'm getting those, people seeing the success, seeing my radicalized version of, I guess, the modern fitness. And so people would ask questions, right? Like, well, how do you do that? Why are you? How do you do that in the competitive end? How do you how do you prescribe, kettlebell swings and burpees and then, a flywheel bike? Like, why would you do that? There were some people that were brave enough to answer some of those questions in the coaching world. And, and so then, which I'm not sure if, I always think this is the way it came about. I'm more than happy, Blake, to be challenged on that. If you think,
Sure.
you've seen it differently in different systems, but when people just keep asking you these questions over time, you got to do something about it. Like you could keep it all to yourself and stay on top of the ivory box and just be like, I'm the withholder of all this information. You can only ask questions and I'll give it back to you. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
but I was like, geez, I really should do something about this.
That's so against everything you are, though. You're a go freedom thinker. Like
Yeah,
that's like at the
yeah,
core of who you are is
yeah.
like,
I
yeah,
just want to always clarify, like, it's all in my head, right? I was just thinking, like, people are
yeah,
asking questions. I gotta put something on paper and say, listen, this is my best stab at this modern concept of fitness in business, in lifestyle coaching, in nutrition, in assessment, and program design. And we put
mm,
together these 5 courses that basically culminated in what was called CCP. So
yeah.
this that answers your question of this, like, people asking questions and me just being like, geez, yeah, I gotta
No,
put something down and contribute, and try my best at it.
that's great. And I think, you know, I think a lot of people from a distance, I don't know that this is true, but it's interesting listening to you because you sense like you have a real love still for CrossFit and the movement of what it did for the fitness community. Like I can hear that in the conversation we're having. What would you say to people who think like OPEX actually criticizes CrossFit modality or challenged it and like kind of looked at it from a totally different perspective? Because I've heard people's critique of that, but I'm not sensing that at all in our conversation.
Yeah, well, you're not going to hear it from me, right? Or you're not going to feel it from me if we get into a longer conversation. It becomes obvious. So those who know me and we speak about it at length, everyone knows that it's not. But I can understand from an outsider's perspective with the current information that's out there, the way people read things today, the way that people gather information. We're in a post-journalistic world where it's vitriol and like hanging your scrotum or showing some cleavage is the only way to actually make movement and dents within being the quote unquote authoritarian figure in what's called like this dissemination of information. And then by the way, you've got to pay for it,
Yeah.
somehow subscription. You see, it just gets all just so. For
Mm,
those individuals, I get it. I understand why they would make those points you just made on how it seemed to be that. But everyone inside who were really anything, they all knew that. They all knew that I had an appreciation for not only my personal participation, but for ideas, right? I mean,
mm-hmm.
why would I, you know, honestly, uh, or how could I benefit whatsoever by critiquing something that is brand new to how people become free movers?
Hmm.
But I can understand it. A lot of people just don't read. A lot of people don't take the time to like
Yeah.
sit and speak with someone, ask some good questions, have the conversation. But those who know, they know I was always appreciative of the concepts. I mean, the ideas, I mean, anyways, I could go on and on, but the
Yeah.
ideas, I also have lots to say, maybe for another time, and I don't want to preempt it so that we can actually get into it in case it does like whet your appetite whatsoever. But I have lots of ideas as well on the where things went wrong. So I could, as an outsider, I can also be a critique because I was inside,
Yeah.
and then I was somewhat outside. So I could also give a critique and also feedback on how things went wrong and why.
Sure.
And that's a whole different thing. But and then
I think
again,
yeah, I think maturity though says that if people who are in an age you said of lack of journalism, I actually really agree and appreciate you saying that. Like there's a sense that we ought to think sometimes there are some people who criticize because they're haters, whatever the people say today, and there are some people who criticize because they care. And I think the
Yeah.
criticisms from the side of I actually care and want this to be a beautiful thing that continues to go to the next generation of fitness.
Yeah.
I think that is actually out of a heart of love and care for the sport or the concept of CrossFit, not necessarily just a full of hate or whatever.
Yep.
And I think it's important for people to know that, because I think when you look at the history of CrossFit, you're a big part of that.
Yeah.
Not the only part of it, but you were definitely, yeah.
It comes down to personal human principles, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
that's the thing I love about it, is that there's truths inside of physical expression, right? The Henry Rollins saying, "The iron never lies." Like it's such a small statement, but it's everything inside of everyone's physical expression, and
Mm-hmm.
that's so. These are the things why, as I use terminology like those who know, and those who don't know never really went to the deepest ends of physical expression attempts, right? They didn't, and I don't mean like be a rock star, push yourself until you suffer all the time. No, I'm just saying, those who went after it, and it happened to be in the CrossFit confines, know what I'm talking about, because we all strived for freedom of movement. That was the end goal that we couldn't we couldn't put our words to it, but you got to that freedom of movement through the truths that were
Mm-hmm.
expressed inside of that physical expression. And I think that was what drew a lot of people to me, what you're prescribing as this philosophical bend inside of fitness in 2007, 2008, because I was saying things like this, right? Like, there's things that you're going to get, believe me. I used to say things like, it's sweeter on the other side when you just try as hard as you can for a long period of time inside of physical expression. So you see what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? I just said it differently than what Greg may have or the CrossFit Journal did, but we're essentially saying the same thing. So that's what I'm saying, is that the tie that binds all that together is that everyone essentially wanted to be free movers. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what kept everyone in line, was all these unbelievable truths that we discovered. Like, oh, you can't do 10 strict pull-ups in like that. That's a fundamental truth that
Yeah.
just, you can't look away from.
Mm-hmm.
Which day you can, because you can fake it. You can change it on
That's
AI, or just say you did it, and take a
that's
picture of
true.
it. But that physical expression that we all participated in, those were truths that were being unfolded for a long period of time.
Yeah, but you have to have the conscience, and a conscience still has to look in the mirror and say, I really didn't do those 10 pull-ups. Like, people have to live with that. Um, which, yeah, I don't want to live with
A
that.
lot of people live with it today.
Yeah, that's true. Uh, I want to kind of land the plane on this. So OPEX has kind of a saying. I don't know where it comes from, but I've always liked it. But live your larger life. Is that right? Live a bigger life. Am I saying that right?
Live a larger life.
Live a larger life. And there's a philosophical meaning behind that, right? And we're kind of talking about the philosophy of fitness. Where did that come from? Explain what that means to you, James Fitzgerald.
Um, well, it's almost the culmination of the entire project. That's where it came from. Landing on, to use your words, of landing this. It brings us to today. It brings us to this meeting. Like, all of it culminates in the live a larger life, because it discusses in everything is inside of it. That, again, those who know, everyone always knew I loved alliteration.
Mm,
Right? So, three L's inside of a sentence, that's a statement. Bing, that's fantastic. These hidden meanings that I would always have inside of, like, coach tip Facebook posts or Instagram posts, or like old CCP manual things, or stuff I would post on the blog back in 2008. That's inside of it, right? Live a larger life. It's not just like, oh, live a larger life. What the hell does that mean? It No, but live means uh, reality. It means, like, go after those capabilities that we were all endowed with, these innate capabilities that we're all endowed with, and try your best to keep challenging those capabilities,
Hmm.
right? That's what living means, right? What does larger mean? Never strive, or never give up striving to think that there's always some. It doesn't always have to be more weights or more time. There's multiple ways to increase your, what I used to call in CCP language, which your clients may not understand, but I'm sure you use different words for it, your maximum physical potential, right? That's what larger means. It's like, no, we're not just talking about live a life. Like, how many people live a mediocre life, strapped with the newest biohack and living for medicine for 60 to 90 years of age? Like, that's not larger. That's lesser, right?
Hmm.
So larger is go after and keep striving, regardless of, my shirt discusses it, this realistic aspect of entropy, physical entropy. Like, and that leads to what life means. Live a larger life. Life we encapsulate as a specific timeline. And to the math folks and the people who loved numbers within CrossFit, or sorry, inside of CrossFit, into OPEX, we love that aspect, right? The numbers of, average years lived. What's the physical potential curve look like for people? In how many movement sessions can people possibly do in a lifetime? What's
Hmm.
the possibility of how strong I can get in a lifetime? How many heartbeats does an average person have in a day? So all those things mean that word life. Like, what is a life? And a life is what I encapsulated in that idea of the person at 95 who had sex in the morning and they climb a mountain and they fall off and it's over. That's what I call
That's a good
the
way to go.
that's the ultimate. Well, that's the symbolic way that I describe life, right? Like, because how do you, first of all, ejaculate at 95 years of age? That's just to be considered, like, oh, I don't know, something to be interesting. How do I climb a mountain at 95? Another great question, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then why does it end there? It all makes you say, well, how do I put all of it together to get to that life, right? And that's essentially what live a larger life means, right?
Hmm.
Is truly be real, always go after and strive, and then there are limitations, right? Like, now, whether that scares people, or I think that there's a huge majority. This is another maybe philosophical thing you and I can discuss offline or maybe online, but I think there's a huge majority of those in a believer sense that become a little apathetic around this when they
Yes.
envision that the limitations stop and then there's other things. There's a lot of apathy, I think, embedded not only to that group, but just I find it inside of that group, that
Yes.
I
Yes.
do think could
That's a
use a
fair
little
critique.
use a little nudge of, like, well, you could still try your best the whole time and still not know. You may still not have any answers or what's going to happen afterwards, but that doesn't mean that you still don't physically go after your potential for the whole timeline.
Yeah.
um, and this is yeah, so that's basically live a larger life and the deeper meanings inside of it.
I love it. I appreciate it. It's impacted me and my fitness, my coaching, my coaches. So thanks for coming on. I appreciate you. And yeah, thanks for sharing your story.
Great questions. Great to
Yes,
be here.
sir. Let me hop off.